All right, welcome back to the channel here. Here we're going to talk about what it means starting out, and what it means to be a full-time freelance photo and videographer in today's market. It's changed quite a bit over the past few years. I started this channel to share some of the trials and tribulations and things that I've learned about freelancing. Over about the last 15 or 16 years. And if that's something you're interested, stick around because you might have there might be something here that you can learn from. And that's really what this channel is about, is to teach you, to help you to overcome some of the things, some of the obstacles that I've had, some of the things to do and what not to do. A lot of times it's what not to do, how we can effectively spend our time. My name is Jeff. I've been doing this for about 15 or 16 years now, and my camera, I shoot a R5C. It's a 45 megapixel still camera that also shoots 8K RAW. I rig it out so I can shoot slow motion in 4K, and I can shoot stills with it, and it's my go-to camera. Something that it's the best camera that I've ever owned, and it's just so versatile. But we'll get into that a little bit later in more episodes, and how to get to that point. I don't, by all means, don't expect people to run out and spend a bunch of money on gear. You can very easily go out and spend a lot of money on gear. One of the questions that I get asked is, how do I get started as a freelancer? Can I do that with a phone? And the answer to that is, yeah, there are gigs that you can get shooting with your phone, assuming you have a decent phone. Anything from like a iPhone 12 or newer will do pretty much anything. I won't say anything that you can do, but anything for some of the smaller gigs that you might want to. You might invest in a gimbal to help stabilize that if you're going to be shooting video. But one of the things that's really it's a big market, and you can do trade outs with it. You can do you can take a little bit of money down and set up a plan for people, especially small business owners. Like if you go into a small business, like a restaurant, somebody that maybe needs food shots for their menu and for their website, for their Instagram page, you can put together a campaign to help them with doing their reels. You can help them recording the actual creative process. How do I hand stretch the noodles in this noodle shop? How are we hand tossing our pizza? Things like that. And especially if you get really creative, there's a lot you can do with your phone, so you don't necessarily have to go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars in equipment. I started doing that when I was going through photography school at the community college. I went and got a 2-year degree in photography, and the camera that I had at the time, I was a single father, and so I went down and I got a used camera from Goodwill, and I started shooting on film with that. And I got a used lens, and I started doing things with that, because it's really, as a single father, was all the money I had. And so later on, that was right about when the iPhone was first coming out, so we didn't have the opportunity to use that type of tool in what we were doing. We kind of didn't have cameras that were capable of that, but most phones now have the ability to be able to do that. But you can do all sorts of different small projects, like I say, not just foods, but you can do things for bars, people that make exotic drinks. You can do clothing lines. I was hired once by a woman to photograph 180 pieces for her online catalog. And you could do that kind of work with your phone. There, at the time when iPhone came out, there were people that were starting to shoot weddings. And, that was just HD. Now, most all of our phones shoot 4K. So you could, potentially do weddings with your phone if you do it right. But it does take practice. It's not something, that's not something as soon as you turn the camera on, you're not going to get this amazing footage. You have to take practice. It takes technique, it takes style. A lot of working in this industry is being able to work with people and really getting them relaxed enough in front of a camera to really capture who those people are, and the relationship and those significant expressions and times in their lives that they want to share with the rest of the world. Like for a wedding, you're going to want to be able to get them to that point and trust you. You know, a lot of it has to do with two things. When you start out, especially if all you have is a phone, you don't have this, $10,000 camera. When you have that kind of equipment, a lot of times that's what people that they look at that and go, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. He's invested a lot of money in gear. But over the years, I've met a lot of guys that invested a lot of money in gear and don't even know how to use that gear. They don't know how to flip the camera over to manual and use the manual settings on their own camera. I've seen people that lost a $10,000 camera trying to shoot a sunset shot in the ocean. The wave came up. It was too close to the water. Wave came up and grabbed that whole camera and pulled it back out into the ocean. It's not about the camera. It's about the person holding the camera, and it's about the connection that you make with the person that's hiring you to film or photograph whatever they're doing. But there are gigs that you can do and go out and do with that camera. You can make a YouTube channel if you want to monetize that and go around with your phone. You can do reviews if you want to do something like that of different restaurants. You can make time-lapse videos of trail hikes. There's just a lot of different things that you can do. It's just you're really only limited by your own imagination. When you start doing stuff that's more specialized and people are needing you to print things like billboards where you need a 30 or 40 or 50 megapixel camera so you can get these huge prints, that's when you're going to start looking at moving beyond your cameras, when you have to be able to do that. Or when you're looking at a video camera, like a cinema camera, something that does things that are specialties, things like large dynamic range, things that you can film beyond what the dynamic range of your phone will do. And dynamic range is it's the amount of light between absolute white to absolute white to absolute black is your dynamic range. Cell phones only have a small dynamic range. When you buy into like a DSLR camera, that dynamic range gets a little bit bigger, so you get more shades, more tonal color, and more contrast, and the ability to manipulate those images more without deteriorating. So when you look and compare the footage from a cell phone compared to a $25,000 cinema camera, that cinema camera has way more shadow detail. It also has the detail in the highlights, like in the clouds or things that are really bright. And you might not necessarily need those things to get going. If you are looking at doing something like that, be sure to shop around. Be sure to see if that's really the road that you want to go down. I did start investing in camera gear pretty early on, and just within the first maybe 4 or 5 years, I had spent somewhere in the neighborhood of about $30,000 buying lenses, camera bodies, and tripods, and gimbals, and jibs and microphones and all sorts of things. But if you buy pro quality equipment, the nice thing about it is it'll last you a long time. A lot of the lenses that I have, I've adapted to the cameras that I buy now. Hold on to the lenses. The camera bodies will wear out, the technology will wear out, but the good glass will always be good glass. That's a little bit about cameras, phones. There's a ton of people out there that are using their phones to make change, to change the way we look at the world. Something that was really kind of a neat thing to see was when the iPhone came out, nobody knew how to use an iPhone. Nobody knew how to swipe yet. But then we were introduced to that swiping by Steve Jobs and Apple. And then our phones went from like what we used to call a QWERTY keyboard on the old Blackberries to swiping. We did that in a matter of a year or so. The whole world started swiping. And now that technology is even getting better. As the technology gets better, upgrade your phone if you want. You don't always have to. You don't have to try to get the best all the time. You don't have to get the newest camera that comes out all the time. You'll end up in it's a bottomless money pit that you can keep throwing money into, trying to keep up with the technology. It can be really challenging. It can be frustrating too, especially if you're trying to remain competitive. But the fact of the matter is, there's stuff that I turn in. I've actually had photos that were published nationwide. I had a photo a couple of years ago. I was in Dubai and I did a portrait of my friend, and they used that they use that in articles all around the world, and it was shot with my iPhone, and it went out on AP. They used it all over. That was kind of an exception, but they needed a photo, and I did my best with what I had, and it turned out pretty nice, and they're pretty happy with it. So there are opportunities to be there. One of the oldest things that we have is in photography is the best camera is the one in your hand. You can spend a lot of money on a camera and leave it in your closet, or leave it in your trunk, or leave it in your camera bag. The best camera is the one that you have in your hand, because that's the one that you're going to be able to capture that moment. Another saying that they used to say is, well, how did you get that shot? Well, F8 and be there, man. Set it on a real neutral kind of generalized setting. Even when you're learning, set it on auto. I don't recommend sticking with auto settings all the time, but if you're really trying to get something before the moment's gone, stick it on auto and capture that. Try to fix it in post if you can. I try not to say that, because it's not a good habit to get into. You should get to the point where you can learn how to fix it in camera, so you don't have to spend hours and hours in Photoshop fixing that image. But yeah, there's a lot you can do with the camera. So I'm going to cut that short. That's kind of give you some ideas. Really, you're limited on your own. Any market that's out there, you can go out and do interviews with your phone. You can interview anybody anywhere with the phone, and that opportunity is there. It's really, you're just limited by your own creativity, but you have two things when you work with people: be respectful and treat them with dignity, and that'll get you a long ways. Open up, a smile gets you a long ways too. Just open up, even if you are just starting with a phone. If you don't have that big, huge, long lens, if you don't have 10 grand worth of camera gear in your bag, don't worry about all that. That stuff will come. Just start shooting, start honing your craft, start becoming a master at your craft, because that's, when you're able to do things that other people are unable to do, that doesn't, you want to work yourself out of ordinary into extraordinary. You want to be able to know when somebody's going to laugh, when they're going to smile. You want to be able to anticipate that shot so you can be there and take that picture, because you can do it with a phone. It doesn't have to be a high-end camera. You can do that with your phone. You can capture the emotion of somebody in a video. Somebody that's truly passionate about what they're talking about, you can capture that, just like I'm doing right now on this phone. You can do that, and you can interview people start out with your family, start out with somebody that you're comfortable with, until you're comfortable talking to people that you don't know. But don't be afraid. What's the worst thing that can happen to you? You just say no? Nah, I'm not up for an interview. It's okay, man. I've been turned down many times. I've got hundreds of interviews under my belt at this point, but there's a lot of times that I've been turned down too. I've been asked to put my camera away more times than I can count. That's okay too. A lot of it's about the journey. If you go out there and you're trying to get that shot, maybe you can't get that shot. Maybe there's somebody in front of you and you can't get your camera around them. Maybe set the camera down and enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy being there. Enjoy being part of it. That's a huge part of being a freelancer. I used to love shoot football games because I was right along the sidelines the whole time. I love shooting the Ironman because I sat down there at the finish line at midnight when they closed it. 70-year-old people coming through after finishing a triathlon. People can train their whole lives. They got to sit there. Sometimes put the camera down. Enjoy being there. That's what a lot of the freelance is being about. Get in there with your phone. Get out there. Take a picture. If you haven't filled your phone up with photos and video yet, you're doing it wrong. Go out and shoot. Shoot as much as you can, as often as you can. That's the only way you're going to find out how to really understand how your camera works, how your phone works, what kind of style, what kind of stuff you want to shoot. Then you can start going down that path. So stick with us. We got more coming. I think I'm going to try to record a couple more videos here in Kihei while I got a little bit of time. But it's a beautiful day. It's a great day to be a freelancer, and I encourage you to enjoy the journey that you're on and get out and shoot. I'll talk to you in a little bit.